Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me today once again is Dave Comerford, and we're going to start with, pretty much the whole episode is obviously going to be about Liverpool's midfield, as per usual. We're going to start with target number one, Manu Kone. Got himself a knee sprain playing against Switzerland the other night for France in the under-21 European Championship. Liverpool, I think it was actually about Kefren Turan. They said they weren't going to do a deal until after the European Championship. But, I mean, that obviously stands for Kone as well. And, I mean, Liverpool's sort of been proven right here, haven't they, Dave?
Yeah, I saw the journalist who shared the image of Kone leaving the stadium on crutches. Jack Lusby made quite a good point about this. He said, as much as people are frustrated that Liverpool have let their business drag on a little bit because of this tournament, this maybe shows why. Because, as much as they are young players, if they do suffer an injury in that tournament, and then that kind of disrupts their pre-season. I mean, last year we saw, I think, a couple of players miss pre-season, and you kind of see how much that affects them throughout the campaign. So I think there was definitely a strong argument for waiting a bit and just seeing if they kind of come through it unscathed. And obviously, Kone hasn't, and whether that sort of takes them out of contention, I don't know. But Liverpool are maybe a little bit vindicated by that if that was their approach. I think the one thing that, and again, this was something that Jack Lusby pointed out when he tweeted it, was that I think he's previously suffered ligament damage in the same knee that he injured the other night. So I don't know if that kind of rings alarm bells and stuff like that. I mean, we all remember what happened with Nabil Fekir when they did his medical. I believe it was an issue in his knee that kind of scuppered that move. So whether Liverpool would be sort of on alert over that, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think it has proven to be a sensible approach. And I mean, hopefully for the players' sake, it isn't sort of an injury that makes any sort of long-term difference to his future or to his career, I suppose.
Yeah, thankfully it was just a knee sprain, really. I mean, when you saw the pictures of him on crutches with the knee wrapped up, you're thinking it could be quite a bad one, that really. But a knee sprain, not an overly serious injury, is enough to keep him out for the rest of this tournament, though. Do you think it is a serious enough one that, like you say, when you're mentioning ligament damage in the same knee, do you think the Reds might just think twice about this one now, especially with our own injury record?
Well, to be fair, it does have to be at the forefront of Liverpool's thinking. The fitness records of the players. I mean, what you had last season, I think you had like 10 midfielders that Liverpool had, 10 or 11. So on paper, you look at it and like, wow, they're so well stocked in that department. They can field like three and a bit midfields basically. But then you look at it, you've got Thiago injury prone, Keita injury prone, obviously Oxlade-Chamberlain as well. Artur obviously missed pretty much the whole season, and then you start to whittle it down, and a lot of the time you only got sort of maybe 5 midfielders available, and then it's a bit like, well, hang on, you don't really have that much depth at all. So in a way, I mean, I remember looking at it, McAllister, you can sort of add up the minutes of Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain, not just last season, but over the last 2 seasons, and they're pretty much equal to what McAllister sort of would have played sort of last year alone. So really, you're kind of replacing multiple players with one in a way, and that just shows you sort of how little they featured and how important the kind of availability side of things is. So yeah, first and foremost, it does have to be at the forefront of Liverpool's thinking in terms of rebuilding this midfield. I think it would be sort of a disqualifier if a player does have a bad injury record. This particular case, I mean, you mentioned there, if it is just a knee sprain, then maybe sort of not too much to worry about on that one. I just think Liverpool will be treading very carefully. I mean, I think the Artur deal as well will sort of very, very much lead to some renewed caution, because I remember when he joined, there was some talk about him being a little bit injured, and then obviously I think it was only sort of a couple of weeks later that he made his debut against Napoli as a substitute. But then not long after that, obviously he was out, and I think his fitness had been a problem anyway at that stage, and maybe that was part of the reason why he wasn't really featuring at all. So I think now that that's happened and he's basically just missed the whole season, that Liverpool are going to have to be a lot more careful. And in terms of the Kone injury, again, it's one of them. You suppose you just defer it to the medics at Liverpool, who will obviously have the kind of examinations they can do on sort of whether that is likely to be a recurring issue. But hopefully, if it is just a minor one this time, then that won't be the case.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there's any argument that I don't think a knee sprain's going to, knock 5 million off his price tag, but do you think there's an argument that it might be a slight benefit for Liverpool if they do end up still going for him because, he can't have an absolute barnstorming rest of the tournament and add an extra 10 million to his price tag?
Yeah, when you were talking, that's what I was thinking. Like, I remember writing about how we played in the first group game that France had, which I think was against Italy, and he was player of the match. And on one of these previous streams, I was saying, I wasn't too worried about the tournament increasing value, but if you have someone who's kind of like maybe in the team of the tournament at the end, then I suppose, as the sort of selling club, you would sort of chuck a bit more onto his price tag. But yeah, I think the knockout stage is only a week long. So if, like you say, if that's the end of his tournament, then I suppose, a lot of it with sort of young players, I think, and maybe players generally, is hype feeds into price tags quite a lot. And, if the hype dies down a little bit, then that's maybe the moment to strike. So I think, in a way, obviously, you never want to see anyone suffer an injury, but maybe his absence would play into Liverpool's hands a little bit. Obviously, we'll see what Thuram can do in the remaining games. And I'm not sure on the exact bracket, but it'd be interesting to see if any of the Liverpool midfield targets that are left, because I know Vega's still in the tournament as well with Spain. If they were to come up against England at some point and up against a couple of, Liverpool's existing midfielders, I think that'd be a very intriguing battle. So we'll see if that one materialises.
Yeah, we'll move on to discussing, a former Liverpool target now. Mason Mount's completed a move to Manchester United from Chelsea. It's supposed to be around 55 million with, I think, another 5 million in add-ons. So could come up to about 60 million. Mount and McAllister, I think both prefer sort of that left channel if they're in a midfield three. Obviously, a lot of comparisons, and they go great energy, great work rate, got a goal in them. How much do you prefer McAllister for 35 million to Mount for 55, maybe 60?
The deals just don't compare at all. McAllister far, far better in that sense. And it feels like an overpay for Man United because Mount's only had 1 year left on his deal. Everyone knows the issues that Chelsea faced with FFP coming into this window, but I suppose it's just a continuation of the theme in that sense of how they've been able to sort of sell so well in spite of that. You'd think that they were going to be a weak position as a selling club because of these financial needs, but if any, and they're getting really good deals for their players, and 60 million for any player who's got 1 year left is sort of an achievement. And I think especially Mount coming off the back of what was a pretty poor season for him last year as well. Don't get me wrong, I would have loved to see him at Liverpool, but I think if you'd said to me, what would you be willing to do? What would you be willing to do on price tag? I think I probably wouldn't have gone above 50 for him. And we've got to be kind of humble and admit that he did seemingly prefer to join Man United anyway, but even if Liverpool was his number one choice, would they have gotten this high? I don't think so. So I think we can live with it. I don't think the regrets will be too strong. It all depends on who Liverpool bring in, I suppose, to be their sort of primary attacking midfielder. So I don't think that will be McAllister. I think he's got more of an all-round job in the midfield. I think he's more likely to be compared to the person we bring in for the other number 8 role, which within the new system seems to be the one where they have the license to kind of get forward, to try and score goals, to try and assist goals. Whether that's Szoboszlai, we'll see. But like that could be a potential comparison that's made between those two players. Similar price tag as well, factor in those add-ons for Mount, both 60 million. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I think if Liverpool can bring someone in who roughly matches output for someone like Szoboszlai who's younger, that'd be ideal, or someone who's a bit cheaper as well, then I think this sort of interest in Mount will be kind of quickly forgotten, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's sort of easy for me to say now, but I was never that keen on the Mount links anyway, to be fair. And if you'd rather go to Manchester United, good luck to him. But the one thing he does bring that McAllister doesn't, obviously, is he is a homegrown player. Liverpool do still need to get some of them in. So I mean, in terms of them having paid a bit more, do you think there's an argument that that's the English premium? You know, you look at Declan Rice going for 100 odd million. That is just because he's English, and obviously he is a great player. But do you think he would have been a useful addition to Liverpool's squad, or do you think they'll be looking to get homegrown players in for far cheaper than that?
It's difficult to be fair, because I'm not sure how Liverpool are going to navigate it. I mean, there was a time when I thought there was going to be a heavy emphasis on sort of Premier League players, on English players in the recruitment, but that's, you look at the list of targets, no one's really kind of ticking that box, I suppose. So we'll see how they do it. I mean, there's also sort of players moving out the club who could have ticked that homegrown box. I mean, you've got to think about that too. So it's not really kind of falling into place, that one, at the moment. I think we still got to see what Liverpool's plan for it is, because they wouldn't necessarily be, I think, going for so many targets based in foreign leagues if they didn't have a potential solution in mind. But I mean, on Mount and the price tag, I think the English premium is sort of twofold in a way. I mean, you mentioned it with Rice as a good example. It's not just the fact that they tick the homegrown box, which is obviously kind of objectively important, and there's an objective advantage that they have. I think it's also the fact that you're in England. The English media are naturally going to focus more on English players, and then they sort of, like I said earlier, they would have more hype around them, and then that kind of influences their price tag. And there's maybe the challenge for Liverpool is that there's sort of better value to be found elsewhere because of that English premium. But then obviously they've got to pay more money to solve this homegrown issue. So yeah, it's a tricky sort of tightrope to walk, but you've got to have the confidence that they'll come up with a acceptable solution to it.
Yeah, you've got to assume they've got something in their back pocket cooked up in the transfer department to solve that issue. But that is all we're going to have time for here on the Morning Bulletin today. So Dave, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.